Welcome to the November 18th, 2024 Arts Commission special meeting. Effective October 17th, 2023, public comments may be made in person or in writing. If you'd like to view the meeting remotely, you may do so in one of the following ways: YouTube Live, Comcast Cable Channel 28, Rossmore Channel 26, Astound Channel 31, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99, or live stream online on the city's website. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Perlman.
Here.
Commissioner Magnani.
Here.
Commissioner Tesfaye.
Here.
Commissioner Klauber.
Here.
Vice Chair Baltazar.
Here.
And Chair Dresser.
Here.
Thank you.
Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. We're gonna go, sorry, go back, excuse me. Introduction of our new commissioner. We have a new student commissioner. Her name is Sasha Perlman, and we are thrilled to welcome you to the Arts Commission, Sasha. And if you wouldn't mind, would you give us just a little bit about you, please?
Thank you. So, hello, my name is Sasha Perlman. I'm a junior at Northgate High School, and I'm really excited to be on this commission because I've lived in Walnut Creek my whole life, and I wanted to get more involved in the community. I'm also really passionate about art. I've done visual art since elementary school and performing arts since middle school, and I'm currently part of Northgate's highest level drama program. So I'm really happy to be here, and I love art there.
Thank you and welcome, Sasha. Now, for public communications. Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comments will be taken during the commission consideration of the item. Next is the consent calendar. Does any commissioner have questions on any item on the consent calendar?
I do not.
If there are no commissioner questions or comments, I'm going to ask the secretary for a roll call vote on the consent calendar.
We just need a motion and a second, and I will be happy to take the roll.
I move to approve the regular minutes. Is that right?
You could approve all the items on the consent calendar if you'd like to make the motion.
Let me. Oh, for approval of the Arts Commission regular meeting minutes of July 22nd. No, I'm still off.
That's good. You're good. Then this one.
And approval of the 2025 Arts Commission regular meeting schedule with the approval of the FY24 Leisure Center for the Arts annual report and approval for the FY24 Public Art Program annual report.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Baltazar. This is a roll call.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Dresser.
Yes.
Commissioner Klauber.
Yes.
Commissioner Magnani.
Yes.
Commissioner Tesfaye.
Yes.
And Commissioner Perlman.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is an item for commission consideration above. At this time, I invite staff to provide the presentation.
While Mariah's walking up to the lectern, I just want to give you a brief introduction to why. So this is, for some of you, not new. It is an overview of the public art program. We also have 3 new commissioners here. And so and I was talking to the chair earlier this year, and we talked about it would be helpful as we're getting into a different phase of the economy. We've had fewer items coming before the commission to review public art, but we have a significant item coming soon around Heather Farm. And so staff felt it'd be helpful. We did this back in 2022, right? 2022, with a bit of an overview for commissioners about what is the public art program, and importantly, what's the role of the Arts Commission. And so that's the purpose of this evening, is to have staff present to you some significant components of the public art program and give you a chance to ask us questions as we go through this, because there isn't a specific item for you to approve tonight, but we're looking for your questions, and then some thoughts about budget as we start to plan for the budget in the next year. And so that's the why of what we're doing this evening, but I'll have Mariah take it from there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Good evening, Chair Dresser and Arts Commissioners, and welcome Sasha, our newest youth commissioner, student commissioner. My name is Mariah Nelson Blyer. I'm the public art manager for the city of Walnut Creek. And as Kevin indicated, tonight there is no voting action on the agenda. But commissioners are asked to listen and receive an overview of the public art program. So obviously for some of you who are new, it's going to be a new kind of info session, Public Art 101 have you. And for some of you, it'll be like a refresher, a review. Let's see. So you have several attachments in your packets. And links online. So there was a lot in there. So we're just going to keep it kind of a broad overview for you. We won't go too far into the weeds. After, we'll break it down according to section, and then after each section we can pause, allow time for questions if you have any, and then in the end we'll have more time for questions, so if something comes up or something. But the attachments in your packet, you should have Public Art Master Plan, Public Art Ordinances, there's 2, Public Art Strategic Plan, and the Public Art Review Checklist questions for when we're implementing public art projects. And then for reference, we have attached also the Public Art Fund, the fiscal years 24 and 25. That was the first 2-year budget cycle that was implemented. So we've put that in there for reference with hope that that will help your thinking about the next budget cycle, kind of a talking point from there. So before we begin going through everything, we wanted to, let's see, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see better. So we're also going to go over some definitions of what public art is, just because that should help us with our understanding of the public art overview. Let's see. I don't know. We do have a slide presentation. This is the ask for tonight. And these are all of the attachments in your packet. So before we get started, we're just going to kind of go over a brief definition of what is public art. So public art is what it sounds like. It's art that is in public spaces and it's accessible to everyone, no ticket, it's admission free and accessible to all. As defined in the Public Art Master Plan, works of public art may include sculpture, photography, original works of graphic art, earthworks, fiberworks, waterworks, neon, glass, mosaics, furnishings, or fixtures, architecture or landscape design if it's created by a professional artist and if it's unique and original. So as you are likely aware, the city of Walnut Creek has long valued public art in public spaces. The city officially encouraged public art projects in the community beginning far back as 1982, when the city council first approved public art requirements and guidelines, kind of endorsing public art projects in the city. The Public Art Master Plan was first drafted by the Arts Commission in 1999, and it was officially adopted in 2000. It's been revised. The last revision was done in 2016. And the plan was in response to a requirement in the cultural resources element of the city's general plan to encourage the inclusion of public art in development projects to ensure a continuing investment and appreciation of arts in the city of Walnut Creek. The general plan required that the city prepare a public art ordinance to assure the continued public and private participation in the public art program. Trying to match up slides. Does anybody have any questions about what, like, the definition of public art is before we move on? No? Okay. So going into the Public Art Master Plan, you have it in your attachments. It's a big document, so we're not going to go totally step by step through all of it, but I can read you just the mission statement. The mission of the City of Walnut Creek's Public Art Master Plan is to integrate art into the city's everyday environment and build a dynamic, exciting, and engaging place to live, visit, and do business. Through public art, the program aims to make our public spaces more welcoming and to create a dialogue between artists and the community that honors our ideals, histories, and shared values. So keeping that in mind, any questions about that? Okay.
I just want to make sure that after we go, sorry, Mariah, after
No,
we
it's
go
fine.
through the presentation, we'll also have an opportunity for anybody to ask questions about anything that you've heard this evening. So if you don't have questions about the Public Art Master Plan now, we can always come back to that when Mariah's finished with her presentation. So just don't feel like that was your only chance to ask. Thank you.
Yes, plenty of time for questions. It's a lot to get through. So the public art plan, it kind of just it outlines and defines what public art is, and then how to implement this through the. So that's what kind of informed the ordinances. So we're not quite there yet. The public art plan also goes through the different people's staff that requires its various staff depending on the project. So it could be building, planning, engineering, and then of course administrative staff like this team here, ourselves, to implement things or to make sure that they're happening, such as like drafting RFQs. And then, of course, there's the Arts Commissioner's role, which is basically to help us see these projects to life and inform City Council. So advise, make recommendations to City Council for projects. And then the other things that the Public Art Master Plan goes through are public art zones, which we won't get too much into. We have the budget, and then approving, and then again back to the Arts Commission, it's approving sites and spaces, and that will lead us into the public art checklist, which we'll talk more about later. But this public art master plan helped to inform the public art ordinances, or helped to define what was needed in the ordinances. So there's 2 ordinances, and Title VII, Chapter 3 states that each major city construction project shall have an appropriate display of art integrated into the project, or a public art fee shall be paid into the public art fund. This is the in lieu. In the cases that, if you're not familiar with how the public art fund is set up, if a developer meets a certain threshold, whether it's budget or space, they are required to pay into this public art fund if they do not incorporate public art into their project. And this fund is what funds, obviously, the public art program, which we can get further into. Chapter 10, Title 10, discusses more about public art, where the municipal projects are required to also either incorporate public art or pay into the fund. Kind of getting all over the place. Does anybody have any questions about that? The public art fund might be confusing, no? So that's really what the two ordinances, it's the ordinances that we must have public art in the city. All right. So another big document in your attachments is the Public Art Strategic Plan. I don't know if you've had a moment to look through this, but it's kind of this is what really guides us on what the goals are, how we meet those goals, who's responsible for what. It kind of breaks down the different parts of the public art program. So the purpose of the Public Art Strategic Plan is to support, grow the public art program while engaging the community attracting others to our community and building their awareness of the value, diversity, and benefit of the arts in Walnut Creek. Does anybody have any questions about the strategic plan? You know, it was kind of a long document in there, kind of breaks different goals down. Yep.
Is a strategic plan something that you and your team are regularly looking at?
Yeah, we do look at it, and I think that, you know, so it's kind of like a working document because as things are completed or they stay on the list, you know, it's kind of a document that's always kind of evolving.
It's such a big list. It's really, when you see all the different pages, I'm just kind of in awe of how much is in there.
Yeah, it's huge. All right, so we talked about this before, the Arts Commission's role. Kind of bouncing over, but the Arts Commission advises the City Council on programs that enhance artistic, aesthetic, and cultural quality of life in the city and contribute to the local economy. The Arts Commission guides implementation of the public art program and the public art master plan. So being familiar with that document kind of helps clarify the role that you play.
I have a question. Just in terms of guidance on this document, there's year 1, year 2, or year 3 for each of the strategic plan areas. So what did those year 1, 2, and 3 refer to in calendar years?
Good question. So I believe that was based off of when it was first drafted, and it was kind of like, here are the main priority goals to take care of in the first year, the second year, the third year, and some of these things have stayed on the list, some of, you know, for longer. I mean, because I think that it was drafted in 2017.
2016 and then approved in 2018?
Yeah.
And so then that would mean that when we look at year 1, 2, and 3, we're just a couple of years behind here. Is that what's happening? Because we had COVID and all
Correct.
of that. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Just
So things are just going to stay on the list until
until we get it right.
we get. Right.
One of the things
Right.
that we're contemplating is when this initiated, there were a couple of arts commissioners that were very passionate about establishing a strategic plan. And so, yes, this was all done pre-COVID. And so there's an opportunity now for perhaps another iteration of this to occur, which is you have a public art committee. There may be others, you know, of you who are interested in driving this. We haven't gotten that far, but this may be worthwhile as we get into the next year or the next fiscal year to determine, is this a document that's worth revisiting? And so perhaps as we get into the new year, you know, you rotate, you have a new chair and other things, you're all still going to be here, but that might be something we contemplate for the next year is, do we want to take another look at this and do something different? Because this feels like a different era in 2016, 17, 18. So we appreciate the question, and we have not determined whether this is something that we can fully dive into, making major modifications, but there may be things that we take this document and tweak it and make it more current. And so we're open to that. And so happy to hear your questions or your thoughts about that.
So then the last document, and well, not the last, the almost last, another attachment is the public art review checklist, which is a super long, again, checklist, but I guess it's really because every public art project is really different. And so there are different things to take into consideration with each project that is installed. It's a comprehensive checklist. It serves as a guide to ensure that the public art is installed only after all of the relevant factors have been thoroughly considered. It includes an evaluation of both the site where the work is going in addition to the artwork itself, ensuring thoughtful and well-informed decision-making process in the art installation and acquiring process. Some key factors that are highlighted in this big checklist are placement within the site, visibility, safety, audience, the site activation, fabrication, maintenance, design, lighting, and of course, budget. So it's a it's a great checklist for the Arts Commission to review.
All right.
Yep.
How does that checklist actually used? Do you fill it out and we talk about it? Or how does it actually work when you're looking at a piece?
Yes, great question. Yes, so for example, when we get to a point where there is a proposal of a public art project, this is a checklist to go down to look at what the artist is proposing to help decide if it's something that is meeting all of this criteria in order to fit into the site. I don't know, Kevin, if you have something you want to.
Well, I think Commissioner Magnani's question was, is that something that you fill out as staff, or is that something commissioners do?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so it's something commissioners do. I think we all do it. Yeah, we all do it.
Just in the past, what we've done is we look through it to help us, to guide us in the questions that we ask when the artist is before us or when staff is providing information about the art or about the project. So it's more guidance for us, but nobody really fills it out. You know, it's just for ourselves.
Commissioner Magnani, I also fill it out when I get my package on the prior week, and I see what art is up for discussion, and I'll get out one of these checklists, and I actually will go through each part of it and make a note. Do I have a question about this? Does it meet the criteria we want? And then it's great to be able to ask questions at the following Arts Commission meeting based on the research that I've done a couple of days beforehand. So it's a really great guideline for commissioners to know if the art that's being presented meets all the requirements that we want it to meet.
Oh yeah, with the project at Heather Farms, we'll be able to kind of use the tool and see how it works for you.
Perfect. I was just going to say that you're going to get to use it pretty soon. So thank you for that question. I do have on here staff role also. That's also indicated in the agenda report. So staff is responsible for overseeing public art program development, installation, and maintenance, which includes the municipal and private development projects that are generated by the city's public art ordinance here. So we just talked about the public art checklist, which you'll have an opportunity to use coming up in a couple of months. And last on the agenda is Public Art Fund. And the city, we discussed it briefly before, but the city maintains a public art fund for private development projects where public art enhancement is required. And then on the last page, there is an example. I think it's in here. Yeah. This was the budget from the last two, so from fiscal year 24 and fiscal year 25. And we were hoping you would look at this and review and make recommendations at the next meeting for City Council. We would imagine we would carry forward the projects that were not realized in this fiscal year cycle. And of course, we're open to suggestions and questions.
Do you want the questions now or later?
You can ask questions now.
So for the murals program, the $30,000 we allotted for the public-private matching fund, I remember that a card was provided to us, which was great, and I passed it around to all my friends and family and my neighborhood. But I was also looking for a link that's directly on the city's website, and it's only mentioned in the Bedford website. So I'm wondering if when people are looking for this information, I would naturally go to the city's website to see what the city is sponsoring, and not necessarily the Bedford website, if
Right.
that makes sense. So could, the real question is, could we do more marketing about that program? Marketing that doesn't cost us any money, like what I just mentioned, put it on the city's website. So that's one question. And then, of course, what other marketing efforts can we make to get the word out that we have this program that is excellent? Not many cities have it. And for people who own commercial buildings in town, this would be a fantastic idea to increase the views and and hopefully the value of their own properties through our program.
Right. Thank you for your questions. I believe that it, and I could be wrong, I haven't checked lately, but I believe that it is listed on the city's website under maybe opportunities or grants. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it is a great suggestion to add it somewhere where it's more visible for maybe people that aren't specifically looking for art already. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts about that, but yeah.
I'm going to see if anybody in the back of the chamber might be able to look that up and let us know if that's located in appropriate places on the website. You'll look it up and let us know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the people behind you are going to look it up. The very back.
And then your next question, yes. I think that it's just going to take, it's like staff time that we haven't really had of going out and kind of taking walks and drives to look at buildings that have empty walls and then just reaching out to those specific buildings or, building owners in the city that, to let them know that we have this program. But yeah, I do think it's an awesome program, and we haven't had any real bites on it. So I'm with you. It would be great if we did have a bigger marketing effort or something to get the word out.
I know we're looking at putting out a request for new murals for Duncan Arcade, and potentially this kind of could piggyback on that.
Also a great
Our
idea.
request.
Carolyn Jackson, Lesher Center General Manager, just confirming that it is not easy to find on the city's website, so we will be addressing that between Elizabeth and I. And we'll also have our Lesher Center marketing team, along with Elizabeth, put their brains together to see how else we can get the word out.
Superb. Thank you.
All right. And I think I heard your question accurately, and we have not put out a call yet. Any other?
Oh, just a couple of questions about the items on the budget, just so I know what we're talking about. The landmark signature sculpture, what is that? Is that a thing or something we're thinking about doing?
So it's not. It was something. So the funds from that so I don't know how far back I want to backtrack, but those funds have been set aside, and they will now go toward funding the Heather Farm Park Public Art Project, so that we're making it a bigger splash, right?
Good one.
But
Thanks.
we were considering a signature piece perhaps for that location as well.
Right. So, the definition of signature piece, it's kind of a thing of like, what becomes a signature piece?
Yes.
It's like, for example, we can say it's something that just happens kind of organically, right? It's like you never know. And for example, let's say Fountainhead. I don't think it was put in at the time and thinking like, oh, this will be a signature piece. And now somehow it's just become this symbol in Walnut Creek. Everybody knows this Fountainhead. And they all name it what they want to name it. So it's kind of the art takes on its own.
So Commissioner McNanny, thank you for the question. We should update the table when we come to you in January. So what Mariah was referring to is in Chapter 7, I think, of the Muni Code that has the ordinance that says for public development, public projects, we're also subject to the 1% contribution to public art. 1% of the construction cost at the time the budget was developed was about $500,000. This is about a $50 million project construction-wise. The Arts Commission felt that this was an opportunity to do something bigger and better. And so the commission approved that 400 and change to be added to the contribution for the project. So it's about a $980,000 roughly.
953,000.
Thank you. Budget for public arts at Heather Farm, which we'll talk about as we come back to in January. So it was adding to what was already a substantial budget of about 500,000 to make it close to $1 million. And so there's the feeling that we can do more with that. It may be one piece, it may be several pieces, but that's the opportunity that the commission felt at the time was, hey, we can do something signature or otherwise with this at that site.
And that may or may not be integral to the center itself?
It'll be either part of that project or within Heather Farm Park in a very visible and public way. So yes, that's a good question, and you'll learn more in January.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question in regards to the contingency 20%. Can you explain what that is? Is that like a rainy day fund
Great question.
under subtotals?
I guess it is like a rainy day fund. Yes, Kevin would know more.
Well, it's meant, right, so as with most construction projects, there's a we don't know aspect of it, right? You're an artist and you think, oh, it's this budget and it's more. And so that's meant to be for each of the projects above is about a 20% contingency you can have for each one. And so that's just meant to be a little bit of a buffer if things are beyond our control or we want to do this or there was an additional engineering piece of that. So it's meant just like any other construction project to be, yes, that I wouldn't call it a rainy day fund. I'd call it more of a in the event of unforeseen circumstances, we will use that contingency for one of the projects above that, potentially.
One more. For the, yes, let's see, the mural matching fund of $30K in 23-24, and then Duncan Arcade in 24-25 at $33.6. Have either of those have not been spent down at all. So would we be going into 25-26 with like 60,000+ in mural opportunities?
If that's, right, yes. Like if that's what the recommendation is.
Do we get to roll those things over, or city council makes if we didn't spend it, they can kind of
Right.
see where they need to fill in the gaps kind of thing? Like what happens with those programs if they didn't happen this year?
Well, I feel like
Go
Group
ahead,
ads.
Emily.
somebody else can answer.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to come up here with all my stuff. It's okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Emily Enders, Bedford Gallery Curator. So the Public Art Fund is separate and independent from the general fund. So whereas if you don't use all your general fund dollars at the end of a fiscal year, they do go back into the general fund budget that gets reallocated depending on what City Council approves for that fiscal year. The Public Art Fund is completely independent of that, and those funds remain in the fund until they're spent specifically for public art projects, whether that's the creation of new public art projects or maintenance or any other, like marketing or things like that crop up.
We haven't done any of the mural matching or?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So if, depending on the recommendation that we receive from you, or the direction we receive from you tonight, we will reallocate funds, according to all of the project priorities that you have, and we'll bring you a proposed budget in January.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Any other questions about the budget?
I think it's a question. I guess, if we make no decisions tonight about changing the budget allocations, are you ready to go out to the public with these RFQs for the Duncan Arcade and the garage, the Lesher Center garage?
These are things that we would like to have as goals for the springtime.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Oh,
Yes,
Kevin.
just to follow up on that, that's correct. And we're still in this current fiscal year, and so there's an opportunity before the end of June, if there's a proposal or request to have a match to a proposal for a mural, then we have that option to do that this current year, right? And so that may happen for a match, right? But it's unlikely, let me ask staff, is it unlikely we're going to do the Duncan Arcade or the garage mural this fiscal year?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
How many city buildings or structures do we have where we would consider is on our list to put murals on,
do you mean city-owned?
or city-controlled or city-owned? Yes.
That is a good question, and I don't have a number. I don't have buildings in mind with a
Or
number.
malls.
Or
Yeah. I asked that because some of these, like the Duncan Arcade murals, they look pretty fresh
Yes.
still.
yeah.
And we have, it seems to me, and I don't have the numbers, that we would have plenty other walls to put murals on. So would it be possible to take our funds and allocate it to walls that have not had a mural on them? And can we look at it that way? Because I, like, for example, really love the garage mural, and I know it's been there for so long, but why take it away and put something else there when we have other walls that potentially could be wonderful?
The garage mural you're referring to, is it the Josh Keys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that piece is looking a little, I mean, it's been there a really long time, and that one's a little tired. So that was why that was on the list as for refresh. But you're correct, the Duncan Arcade, that's, I think, because it's so covered in that alleyway, it's really held up. And so it's like painful to think about replacing those ones.
Yeah.
So
There's also a vintage character to murals that are well done and along, the spectrum of time. People look at murals with a different set of eyes, more from a nostalgic standpoint. So for people who grew up in Walnut Creek, when always were in and out of that garage, it might, that might be a mural that, although it looks old, it's great that it is old, because it's proof that we've been having very successful art pieces. I'm not trying to argue, I'm just trying to get us to think about maybe we should put our eggs in a different basket and like increase our opportunity for art. That's it.
I appreciate that. I mean, it would be great to see more murals on. I don't have any buildings in mind. No, none are popping into my mind at the moment. I'm open to suggestions.
We do this from staff. This is why we're here tonight. We want to hear your thoughts. And so when you conclude your questions, we'll come back to you at the end of this discussion and see what thoughts you have for us, so we can come back to you again in January with a recommendation. So this is helpful.
Well, since you brought it up, I'm kind of curious about this whole concept of putting a mural up for a few years and then doing a new mural in its place. I tend to think of murals as more or less permanent. So I guess my question is there a plan, like when we commission a mural, is that with the understanding that it's going to last a certain period of time, or is that decision made as time passes?
So murals are technically considered temporary art, with an idea that they'll last 5 years, depending on the site where they are, depending on the amount of exposure they have to the sun or the elements, or if they're dirty or graffitied, or so that's kind of that answer. that yes, I mean, it would be great if some of them were permanent and then permanent with murals. I would think that maybe if they could have a 20-year lifespan or a 25-year, that would be great. It's a little different than something else in a different medium.
I think that in the past, because times were different when we first came up with the murals program, I think your characterization of what a mural is supposed to be is right on. But I think we need to revisit that point because different times. Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Does any member of the public wish to provide public comments at this time?
Mm-hmm.
Does any member of the public wish to provide comment at this time? Come on up.
I think she.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Churin. I'm a relatively new member of the community. I'm originally from New Jersey. I moved out here a couple of years ago to be with my family. So I'm trying to understand how things work here a little bit. The definition of a professional artist, is that somebody who that's their primary source of income, or somebody who simply sells things from time to time and may have another profession besides that? That's my first question. And my second question is, do you solicit these projects? Do you commission them? Or do people come to you and ask you, can I do something for you? Thank you.
Let's see if they're, hold on. See if there's any more public comment.
Are there any other public comments before we answer a couple of questions?
So typically what we do when there's a question of the public for the commission, we turn to the chair and see if the chair would like staff to respond and make this more formal than it needs to be, but that's the process. So, Chair, would you like staff to respond to those questions?
Yes, please,
I'd
staff,
be
thank
happy
you.
to.
All right. Thank you for your questions. I will attempt to answer what makes. I mean, that's a tricky question. What defines a professional artist? And I don't know. I don't know how to answer that the right way. I think Emily would be best to answer that because, right, there are a couple of.
Hi again. Yeah, that is a very excellent question. So when we mean professional artist, that artist should have a portfolio. Doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be a well-established artist, but they should have a body of work that represents their practice and their commitment to their practice. We live in the Bay Area, and so being a full-time artist is not really feasible for a lot of people, and so it might not be their primary earning job, but it should be a large portion of where they spend their time and how they are and operate in the world. So we do a series of different types of calls. So we, for Heather Farm, which we have been talking about kind of a lot this evening, that was an RFQ and an RFP process. So we put the word out to the art world and asked people to apply for that particular job. When we do murals, we usually have a short list of artists that we develop a smaller list from, and then we have an artist selection panel, which is composed of an arts commissioner, a city council member, a community member, and an arts professional and staff. And we go through those artists, and then that panel will select artists and recommend to the Arts Commission that they approve that artist for the job. Mm-hmm.
Well, at this point, staff would like to hear if there's any additional either questions from the commissioners about everything that you saw, or if there's any comments you'd like to make that will help us. Monica, can you pull up the budget again? Sorry. If there's any comments you'd like us to take under advisement as we come back to you in January with the more specific budget proposal.
As an overview, Mariah, it's just a beautiful presentation. I love the new photographs. Thank you for putting Net's mural in the presentation, but it was just so easy to follow and to read. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
To maximize that.
I've got a couple. Is that okay? It was great to kind of run down things and look at the budget again and have this conversation just about how we bring more art and diverse voices to Walnut Creek. I think what I've experienced the last couple of years learning from the commission is this budget is great, and I'm all for as many dollars going into artists' pocket as possible, but there is a capacity issue on running these programs inside the city. Your staff is so small and mighty and great, but like, are these the right priorities given the capacity and how you're structured? So in order to make a program for $30K work, like what do you need to actually set aside so that there's space and time so that that money can be spent down? Or thinking about these few different kind of mural initiatives against something really large like Heather Farms, which is going to be a much more established artist, likely, do you want to spend murals on growing an emerging artist portfolio here in the city? Are there muralists or local artists that might want to work with a younger artist so that we can kind of merge these things together? Because I think with a project like Heather Farms being so great, the majority of your capacity is likely going to be there. And I know how much I love murals as a resident, but like, how do you balance those things, and what does that need to look like in the budget for those things to happen? Maybe it's not 5 murals at $5K each, It's actually 3 murals this year or 2, and we need to set aside a portion of money so that we can advertise on social, have it running digitally, and somebody's actually calling these places and scouting. Because all of that felt like a really large task list for people managing galleries and $1 million public art projects at the same time. So that was a big thing for me, and I do think as a commission, we can help shape some of the narrative around even these smaller buckets of money, what kinds of artists, how we might be opening the door to new voices, or bringing back folks that are more seasoned to work with young artists, even in our local schools. All of that takes fun coordination.
Thank you. I think that that's what this discussion is for, to decide, do we want to, I don't know if it would be a reallocation or maybe creating a new priority or a new goal and shifting some of that to create these programs. But again, and then trying to envision how we would see them come to life.
May I ask a question? So these suggestions will you guys come back and maybe set us up in like subcommittees or some committee to help you figure out where our new priority areas may go? Are you going to take our suggestions and then come back on the next meeting and tell us what you decided, or are we going to participate in making those decisions?
I think it would be helpful if there was some participation, and we have the Public Art Committee for this reason, to kind of flesh out these ideas and see what they look like, how we would implement them. Emily, if you...
Yes, Commissioner Klauber, you have the Public Art Committee for this purpose, and that would be our intent, is to take something there and then come to the full commission for sure. So yes, you will be involved. So this is the first step of that. So it's this step, Public Art Committee, and then we'll come back to you in January before we take it to council.
Okay, looking forward to the invitation. Thank you.
And we are okay with hearing your thoughts tonight about how you feel about murals, because staff's hearing some different thoughts about, should we be replacing versus looking at doing other murals in other places or reinvesting that money. And so happy to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, if Commissioner Baltazar's, it's good to have different commissioners' insights so that you can then figure out, okay, well, this is the path forward. If what Commissioner Balthazar had said was a motion, I would have to second it. I think it's incredible what the staff does with their right and left hand, basically. They're very little. So, yeah, I think it's realistic to reconsider everything that they have to do so that we do the things that are on their plate super well.
Yeah, we're not looking for a motion tonight, although if you want to make a motion that staff is doing a great job, we'd be happy to do that. But this, just, again, you're, from commissioners, in your individual capacity, your thoughts are happily heard and appreciated, especially, you know, if one of you were actually an artist who's done murals before, we might welcome their thoughts too. Oh, look at that.
Yes, hi. I'm one of the artist commissioners here who happen to be, who have a mural in the city of Walnut Creek. So you can go tomorrow if you like and see the my mural in the children's corner of the library in the lower level. And what I want to say to that was, it was my first mural. I am not a mural artist, but I am now.
Yes, you
Because of the experience that I had, it was wonderful. I am a professional artist, so it was an easy transition to do a mural. So I do believe that you don't necessarily have to have mural artists to do these works, depending on what their capacities are. And I think that's why we vet them, is to see, you know, if they are able to carry on the work and execute it, because it's not an easy thing to do. But I want to say, though, that I love that the city of Walnut Creek gives these opportunities for all levels of artists. Having said that, I hope that my mural stays there longer than you know, just a few years. But I think one thing maybe we can keep in mind as we're looking for artists is if having either a nostalgic or any of these things are, you know, a thing with murals, which they are, people get attached to them and they, you know, it's a thing and it's a beautiful way to celebrate the city. So maybe part of our criteria could be looking for things that are not trendy, possibly, you know, having the artist tinker through and something that's lasting in the classic sort of, you know, just putting maybe a speck of some sort as part of the vetting process so that we don't have to have these conversations. Just something to consider.
Thank you, Commissioner Tesfaye.
Mariah, I also think it would be helpful, and I don't know if this is the place to do it, for us to know how much capacity you actually have or don't have to take on a more active role in the mural process. Because if 100% of your time is being spent on the Heather Farms project and also maintaining the collection that we have, you have 0% time to be working on murals. So I suppose that's important for us to know of how we kind of drive this, if Mariah even has bandwidth to take any of this on.
Well, I think that it's, you know, these projects are, it's everything kind of comes and goes. It's like we had to hurry and, you know, drafting the RFQ was a lot of work and getting through all of that, speaking about Heather Farm Park. So that's why we were kind of envisioning, okay, I'll probably in the springtime, once the artist has, or artists, plural, have been decided on, that will be well underway, and then I will have more room in my schedule to visit murals. And so that's why we were envisioning, okay, we can probably put a call out in the spring. Thank you for being considerate of my schedule.
I'll continue sharing. Okay, as you think about capacity and priorities around murals, here are the things that I've been going through in my mind. One, when I look at these numbers, it's like, ooh, better than nothing. So I want to be mindful that there's abundance and not scarcity. Like these monies aren't the end of mural monies. But with that said, thinking about 25 and Heather Farms, I like what's in Duncan Arcade. I think it's beautiful. It is holding up really well. So a part of me is like, oh, save it and spread. But I'm curious about the exercise of changing those murals. It's a tighter area. It seems like production and collaboration of installation is actually manageable. Like, is that the better play? And then you actually know what it takes to change them over. And so then it is a process, and that could get you set on a trajectory of those get renewed every 3 to 5 years. So it's ephemeral to an extent. And then the longer term play, the mural matching is so cool, but we need a map, we need a scout, we need somebody doing some biz dev with these buildings, because we don't want, it's like Massimo sidewall in front of Leisure Center, it's begging for a mural, but there's plenty of other places in the city too. So I'm just like, how do we get the squeeze and the juice? I don't know, whatever the saying is. But I'm a little bit concerned about how we actually bring murals online, take them down and do it again as a practice, to then know what capacity truly is for all of these things, including the budgeting.
I mean, it's a great question or concern or consideration. And the thing is that every mural will be different. Every, like you're saying, so Duncan Arcade, it's been done once. It was blank walls being turned into murals. Logistically speaking, you're right. It's a small area. I think that's a lot more manageable than, say, the one that Nigel Sussman just completed out at Tice Valley. So it's kind of a hard question to answer, because without, I don't know, every project is just going to be different. So I guess I don't have like a real solid answer, but yeah, sure, these are things to take into consideration. I think it's like all public art, not just murals, but everything. Every project is so different that it's kind of hard. You can kind of guesstimate, and then there is that contingency of, and especially with murals and outdoor art, of weather and rain, and there's just a lot of different variables that can sidetrack or delay a project that's outdoors. And then, of course, Nat, to your point, indoor murals will last longer. Inside the library, it's protected from the elements, so that could be a longer term mural.
Well, we were introduced to the checklist a little while ago, and that's a very elaborate checklist for selecting works and sites. I wonder if you have a checklist for this process of regenerating murals.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, how did you decide that Duncan needed to be redone and the Lesher Garage?
So I think that, Duncan was before my time here, but Emily has an answer.
Hi there. So some of you were actually on the commission when we introduced Duncan Arcade, and we had always envisioned that as a rotating rotating mural area. And so we modeled it after Clarion Alley in the city, and that those murals get swapped out very rapidly. So we put those murals up, and now 5 years in, they look great. And so now we are reconsidering what that rotating timeline looks like. We were going to do every other year. So by now we would have had 3 different iterations of those murals, but because they've lasted so well, we are trying to be cognizant of our budget. And because they look really good, we decided not to move forward with that quickly rotating timeline that we had. So it's kind of a question to the commission as well. Do you want to keep that area as a rotating mural area? If so, how many years, given that, we know that they last a pretty long time there and we don't have a lot of graffiti that happens? Or do you want to make those a longer term, more committed area? That's kind of a question that we have for you as staff too, because that will help us with budget development. The Lesher Garage mural, that was just an interest that staff shared with the Arts Commission and that they agreed on, 2 years ago, because that mural is quite old, and we, thought that that would be a great opportunity for a refresh and to give an artist an opportunity to put a mural up here. Doesn't mean it has to go away, but that was our thinking behind that.
And so I would add, for the Duncan Arcade, the thinking was it's an opportunity for other artists to come in, maybe newer ones, to have their space here, because those are 5, 6? 5. So 5 new artists to come into Walnut Creek and have their work displayed for 1, 2, 3, however many years. And so that's a philosophical question from the commission. So what we're hearing is there's interest on the part of the commission to not just do what the Arts Commission settled on a couple years ago, but to bring you some options there. And then ultimately, this can be your recommendation to the City Council as to how you want the Public Art Fund to be allocated in the next budget cycle. And so, again, I'm not looking for an answer this evening, but over the next couple of months, you can be thinking about this and what's changed in your minds. For those of you who've been there for a while, or those of you who are new, what should murals be? What should they be representing as an opportunity for new artists, or should they be there for a while because we like them, right? And so those are good, frankly, policy discussions to have at this level. And so this has been a good discussion, but more questions.
I have one more question about this budget. So for the general fund contribution from City Council, my understanding, I saw somewhere that in 2023, it was 10,000. Am I correct?
I think it was 10,000 in 23 and then 12,500 in 24.
Okay. And then does that get put into this total that we're looking here? Is that, would that be correct too?
It would. This budget is for FY 24-25, so that was not, we didn't know, because it's up to the City Council's discretion how much money they give. It's a minimum 10 and upwards of 50. Which
Right.
we would love. But so every year it's a differing amount depending on general fund support. So this budget that we developed in 24 and 25, I think that we would get 10,000 a year. So we got a little bit more in FY 24.
Okay, so but because it's a forward, but like we're trying to create a budget for the coming years, then would you make that assumption just based on what they've allotted to us to the general fund before?
Right. So we would
And
look
not
at
the 50,000, and why can't we think about 50,000?
Well, part of your job as an arts commissioner is to be an advocate for our programming. So
We're being
if you
televised. Hello.
which I do appreciate all the advocacy that you do for us. But part of that advocacy could look something like talking to your city council about the contribution that they do make to the Public Art Fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
True. And you're asking, as we project what that budget will be, staff will be working with staff from the city manager's office and the finance department to identify what's the condition of the general fund, how healthy is it, what's their sense as to what they'll be recommending to the full council for their allocation to the Public Art Fund. So we'll know that as we get farther into the spring. The other piece of what the budget will be is we are continuing to get in lieu contributions to the Public Art Fund. So this budget will be increasing, even though there's ins and outs, right? So there'll be increases through developers who chose not to put public art on site. But there's also expenditures, like the signature art piece will be allocated to Heather Farms. That won't appear here. So there'll be changes that you see, in some cases significant, other cases relatively minor, that to the number. And so at this point, we're just looking more philosophically what your interests are generally around what you'd
Right.
like to see rather than the actual dollar amount. But
Yeah,
this is still helpful.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So then, thinking about Heather Farms and how large that project is and important to the cities, for all of us, at this point, has anyone thought to create an actual budget beyond what we have in here? Do you know where I'm going with this? Like, what's the reality versus what we have, and how can we achieve that? reality in terms of, or dream for Heather Farms? How do we make what we have planned for Heather Farms really come together in a realistic budget versus the relatively small amount of funds that we have?
So Heather Farm, that project budget has already been allocated. So it's $953,000 and some change.
Right.
And so that is the set project budget for that particular project. So that is what we're working within, is almost $1 million, which is substantial for the city of Walnut Creek. And you know, we know that we will get what we were looking for out of that project budget. Am I answering your question?
The other piece that may
well-
come is we don't know specifically where the art's going to be located. And so let's say the Arts Commission approved a number of site options, right?
Right.
Let's say that the artists that are recommended by the selection panel and the artists and the sites that are selected by the Arts Commission are all exterior. But the Arts Commission and staff believe that there should be an opportunity for us to pursue murals inside the building. Exactly. That might be something we come back to you in January or even later in the spring and say, would the Arts Commission like to recommend to council that some of the public art fund go toward a mural, for example, inside the building? And so we won't know that yet until January when we come to you with the ideas around public art at Heather Farm. And so it's a little bit chicken and egg until we know specifically where the public art's going to land at Heather to know what else we may want to do there. And so appreciate the question, and we'll know as we go through this process what's going to be the $953,000 and then what other opportunities this building is built that we can explore.
And off of that, like, so if we spend our budgeted amount for Heather Farms, how long does it typically take for us to get, refill or path balance?
Sure. So that really is dependent on developer fees. And that is, of course, dependent on the economy. And so, in any given year, we're not exactly sure how much money we might get into the fund. And we have some estimates, of course, when we look at historical data, like, that we feel comfortable projecting those estimates of what will come into the fund. But then we had a year like 2020, right? And so that kind of, obviously changed the trajectory of what we were looking at. But the Public Art Fund is, receives a substantial fund from in lieu fees every year.
Okay, yeah, but regardless of 2020, we still had a boom in real estate development, right? Even that year, if I'm not mistaken. No argument, just a statement. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioners, any other comments or questions before we move on?
I had a quick question with the Duncan mural project. When it's time to renew them, is the idea to renew them at the same time, or do we sort of look at to see what's new, what's fresh and what needs to be revamped? And is that something we can assess? And we don't necessarily have to use all of the budget for that, since not every art piece needs to be replaced. How do we look at that?
You can we'll just stand. Yeah, we'll stand up. So our original intent was to have them rotate at 5 at a time. So, if we were going based on our original design, it would mean that all 5 get painted over. But that's, again, like, we're looking to the Arts Commission tonight for feedback and direction on that. If that's not what you envision for that space anymore, we are happy to, work that into the budget moving forward, because some of the murals, you're right, might deteriorate faster, and those would need to be replaced, while others could stay up for longer.
I'm going to summarize what I think I heard, and Mariah and Emily can join in. I think the bulk of your discussion around murals. And so when we come back to you in January, that may be some things we modify here. So questions are, should we retain the existing murals or replace them, either in whole or in part? Should any additional money be set aside for Heather Farm beyond the $953,000? what are the realistic mural budgets, right, for this? Some is better than none, but more is better than some. How about that? Support for new emerging artists, any other new sites, buildings for murals, and then just a general promotion of the mural match program, marketing or otherwise. So, was there anything else that you heard? Okay. So that's what we were looking for.
Any commissioners have any additions to Kevin's list? Or corrections to it? No?
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to look for reports on projects. May we please have the public art report?
Yes. All right. Set up. One moment. All right, so this is public art updates since our last meeting, so this should be pretty brief. As you may recall, in March, we removed Fountainhead, the work by Sayed Alavi, because it was, as you can see in the images, in desperate need of some restoration. It was gone for quite a while, and now it is back. If you haven't seen it, please go visit this piece. The artist actually was here because he is serving on the artist selection panel for the other Farm Park project. So he agreed to walk down with us and have his photo taken. And actually, he was super pleased with how the work turned out. So that was nice. It's always nice when you have an artist that is happy with the work that's been done. So that is that. And you may recall that Pinstripes, they did an elective art project on their exterior wall. This is on Main, this is what used to be, or actually this is like Broadway Plaza. This is what used to be Crate and Barrel. And they are also subject to the percent for art fee because this is an elective project which does not meet the public art requirement. So we can expect that they will be paying the in lieu fee into the public art fund. So there's some budget promise for the fiscal year. I guess
I have a question about that. The difference between expectations and that's the rule. So are they paying or not?
Yes, so they are paying.
Thank you.
Yes, and that is, I mean, it's a good question. It's always something that is sometimes confusing to developers. Right, but they are paying, and they have not given us any grief about it, so yeah. And yes?
So did their art that they put up have any oversight by you?
Yes, so the Public Art Committee did see the initial design by the artist or the sketch that the artist had done. Abstracted landscape or abstracted kind of floral pieces. So those were reviewed. Is this not?
I think by none of us. It must have been prior arts commissioners.
Oh, you know what? It was the Small Projects Committee. I'm sorry.
Okay, those also must have been other arts commissioners.
Who's on that?
May have been
It was
Jane and
at the time it was Ann. It was Ann and Sky. Yes. Yeah.
this guy. Okay, thank you.
No longer here. Yeah, so, and again, it's elective art, so we don't have a huge amount of say in it, but they did see the design, and it's pretty close to, it was pretty close to her renderings, the artist's renderings.
Is there an artist like a?
Yeah, her name is Charity, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Gangal, or,
Oh,
yeah.
at the bottom. I see it now. Thank you.
So it's enamel paint on hardy board. And I guess hardy board is like a siding to a house for an exterior project. So the hope is that it will last. They have been painted with a clear coat of varnish with a UV coating to hopefully mitigate any loss due to, sun and exposure.
So then, what's the difference then between elective art and art that would satisfy the 1% requirement?
Very good question. So elective art, so when there is a project where there is required art, it's a threshold. So usually, according to the Public Art Master Plan, if the project will yield more than $50,000, the recommendation is to implement a public art project if it makes sense, if it's a building that can withstand public art or a space that can withstand it. If it's less than $50,000, the recommendation is usually just to submit the fee to the public art fund. With, the way things are, it's hard to find public art for under $50,000 or, and actually have it fabricated and installed because it has to be original artwork. It can't just be something off the shelf. So a lot of developers will decide to actually implement the public art where it makes sense. There are cases like this where they wanted to do public art, but the artwork that they chose to implement doesn't meet the requirement because it's not, it doesn't meet the budget requirement, if that makes sense. So they chose to do this. They didn't want to spend the required amount that they would have had to spend on art, and so they're doing they're doing both.
If I can piggyback on that, then is this doesn't fall within the public art? That's why we don't know about it, kind of?
Correct.
Okay. And I say that also, I have seen something, unless you're going to cover it, down by Leisure Center, the piano on the ground, there's some artwork. And so as a arts commissioner, I saw that and I said, oh, that's great. But I'm just want some clarity on, other than the budget, from my understanding, what in the definitions we have for public art, I was a bit confused. I thought that was public art, and I also think this is public art. So I think it doesn't involve our committee if it doesn't meet that threshold of the budget, correct?
I think it's a combination of the threshold and then also in this case, it's privately owned public art. So we did see it, the committee did see it, the special projects committee saw it and had a say in it, but right. And then for the piano on the ground, does somebody want to?
Well, right, let me take a step back. So in the master plan, which is why we're having this conversation this evening, the master plan and the ordinance lay out specifically what the Arts Commission's role and responsibility is. So in this case of Pinstripes, when they had an application in with the planning department, they were presented with, here are all your fees, right? There are lots of fees that developers have to come in. Public art is a fee. They're given the option. Would you like to contribute to the in lieu fund, or do you want to put art on site? They said, we want to contribute to in lieu, and we also want to do above and beyond that art installations. And if you go to their building, they actually have some other sculptural elements in the front there. There's like a corkscrew and some other things. Their choice. To the extent that we had the ability to review these, the small projects committee looked at that, and then we provided reports and updates to you throughout the last several months. And so John Muir did something similar, where there was a specific requirement they had for 1%. They put art on site, and then some, right? They did more than that, which is great. So just like this, you want to do more than what's required of you? Absolutely. That's kind of the genesis of this specific project, and then staff was involved in that. From these items, we didn't review the corkscrew or the other things that I think were put on the front. And then with the Locust Street project, that wasn't a public arts expectation. There was no 1% contribution there from that because that was just an improvement to the street. We don't require the engineering staff to contribute public art to street improvements. We just said, hey, while you're at it, if you could add this element, which is still within the traffic safety requirements, right, black and white and lines, and then, because we've seen this in other cities, would you be willing to put this down, and they said yes. And so it wasn't public art per se, but it was a way to enhance what happens at the Leisure Center through a project. So that's something that, looking back, we probably should have said, hey, by the way, this is coming, and you'll see this on Locust Street. But it wasn't within your purview because it wasn't that 1% contribution. They just chose to do it because they were going to put the pavement markings anyway for the crosswalk. They just did this differently. And so some of these are gray areas, right, where staff is involved in some, not involved in others. As long as they're meeting the requirements of the 1%, either through art on site or through the public art fund in lieu contribution, then we're satisfied. But as we go forward, as these opportunities come up, we'll be bringing more to you for you to at least be aware of, if not be reviewing.
Thank you.
Does that clarify? Does that answer the question about, okay. Sure. And I think. So we have what's coming up. Heather Farm Park Aquatic Community Center Public Art Project. This is just a brief review of the timeline that we've been working on. July 2024, the Arts Commission approved sites for artwork in and around the park and the new building. Those sites are what the artists are now going to be working with. We don't know what they're going to propose. In September, we met with the artist selection panel, and they conducted artist applicant interviews with 10 different artist teams. After those interviews, there was discussion and voting, and they arrived at 5 artist teams to create proposals. These artists are working on their proposals now. There was one other meeting with the architects where the 5 artist teams were present, and they asked all of their very technical, logistical questions of the architects, questions that we as staff can't really answer. And so it was great that the architects were available to answer all of their questions, and that will help them create their proposals. Some artists have chosen to come out and see the site on their own. I did FaceTime tours for a couple of them who could not make it in person. They are working on their proposals. The artist selection panel will reconvene in December, and the 5 artist teams will present to us on Zoom. After that, it is up to the artist selection panel to make a recommendation to the commission on which artists or artist, depending on which they think after looking at their proposals and their budgets and taking into consideration many different elements and features, which artists they would like to have present to you as a commission. That will take place at the January meeting. So that is still to be determined how many artists will actually present at the January meeting. And then fabrication and installation will come later. That obviously goes along with the building timeline, the building itself. Questions?
Yes, questions. So am I understanding correctly that the committee will choose 3 out of these 5 and then present, and those 3 will then present to this commission for final selection? Is that right?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what will come after the presentations. It would be ideal, right, if we did have at least 3 to present, but I don't know. You know?
So and
Right.
Sarah can weigh in too as a member of the panel. We're not looking for the selection panel to provide you with options. Like you could do artist A, artist B, artist C. These are the recommendations from the selection panel. These are the artists that we recommend. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 5 for that matter, right? Every, let's say 5 artists come up with $150,000 projects, it could be 5. Unlikely. So the ones that you see will be the ones that are specifically recommended for the project by the selection panel. We don't, Mariah's right, we don't know the number. It could be 1 that has a spectacular project for $950,000, or it could be less. And so until we get through the process, what you will see in January is the recommendation from the panel about these are the artists that we think should be part of the project.
Okay. But this commission approves the final, right? We vote on who is the final artist.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And unless there's an appeal to the city council, which is highly unlikely, your decision is the decision.
Thank you.
All right.
Commissioner questions? I just have one question. I took the public art walking tour by Fountainhead, and someone asked me if the artist approved the color, and I said, of course. Am I correct? Because the color is phenomenal.
The artist is super happy with the color.
Yeah, it's great. Who picked the color? Did he pick it or did you pick it?
So the original color is no longer made. And also, we selected a paint as per the recommendation of the art conservator to use this special super, super high grade quality paint that actually has like metal flecks in it to last longer. So we went for a different kind of a paint and the closest we could get to the color. And so it just was what was available. And then the artist was super happy. And he even said, "Oh, I think this is better than the original." So that was a quote by
I
him.
agree. I think it's an improvement on the original, so great job.
So thanks. All
Time
right.
for an update from the Lesher Center Strategic Plan. Just Carolyn, I think.
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, Carolyn Jackson, General Manager at the Lesher Center. We've had a very successful kickoff to our latest seasons for the Gallery, Center Rep, and our Headliner series, including 3 headliner events just this fall. We welcomed Chris Bodie to a sold-out crowd as our kickoff, had a fireside chat with Rita Moreno that was also a fundraiser for Center Rep and our education programs, and then had an audience of mostly families for 360 All-Stars, which is an urban circus. And so Peggy, the Diablo Regional Arts Association Executive Director, and I had a great time running around being like, we know no one here. It's amazing. Because a lot of the programming, of course, with the Headliner series is to really broaden what we're offering on our stages and to introduce new people to the Lesher Center. So to be able to look around at an audience that was full of a very different type of person than what our other headliners or Center Rep events see was very exciting. This has also been the launch for the headliner series of the Pay What You Can option. So that has been slowly evolving over the last few years. First was Center Rep offering Pay What You Can preview performances, then the Gallery moving to a Pay What You Can model last year, and now this year we're releasing, as part of the headliner series, a subset of tickets that are also Pay What You Can as we continue to increase access to great art and artists. Coming up, we are getting ready to embark on a critical part of the strategic plan that has taken a little bit of a long road to get to, which is a brand new ticketing software. So exciting. So tomorrow evening, we have an item before council to approve a contract with a new provider that will also be merging our data with Diablo Regional Arts Association so that we'll have a full picture of our patrons, their ticket buying behavior, their interactions with our marketing and communications, and their donations to our various programs, which will drastically improve our ability to attract folks to be loyal patrons to us and to be donors to us. And so we're really excited about that opportunity. And the new system has a wide range of functionality that we do not have today, a lot of opportunities for efficiencies and streamlining and automations, which will just mean we're able to do more and more once we get that system set up. And alongside that, we are partnering with a new employee at Diablo Regional Arts Association. They've hired a director of philanthropy who will be supporting Peggy with fundraising initiatives, and they bring experience in moving databases and systems from a prior job that they had, so they'll bring that kind of lens from the fundraising side of how do we best implement this system, while our team will bring the ticketing and the marketing side. So lots of exciting things ahead as we hopefully launch in April with the new ticketing software so that we're selling next season, 25-26, in the new system. Those are my updates on strategic plan.
Any questions for Carolyn?
I have a question. Remember the wonderful program outside of the Leisure Center that was a Hispanic.
Fiesta Cultural.
Yeah. So how often are we going to have that every year, or are we going to have different cultures every year?
Great tee-in to future programming. So we do have the third iteration of Fiesta Cultural coming in June 2025. And then we are exploring for fall 2025 a South Asian-focused festival, similar concept, right? This mix of headliner performers and then a free day on the plaza with a wide range of more local performers. And as we look to then following summer, so summer 2026, we're exploring different options for what a festival may look like for that year. So we'll have done 3 years essentially of the Latin-focused festival. We're moving into the South Asian Festival, and then by next summer it'll be a question of which direction we go in next for that.
And who decides that? Like, what's
Yeah, so that's under my direction, alongside with Peggy and Matt Morrow, our artistic director for Center Rep, and Emily Enders, the curator for the gallery. That's all part of our programming discussions, alongside input from the Diablo Regional Arts Association Board of Directors.
And did they accept suggestions from this group here?
I always accept suggestions from this group here. You know how to find me, including right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
On the initiative to increase diversity and broadness of the audiences, obviously you track attendance, but is there any way to track whether audiences are becoming more diverse, or who's coming to what programs, or is that just too complicated?
So at this point, it's more anecdotal because it's us being on site, right, and seeing whether the mix of audience members looks different than at other events. But as we move again into this new ticketing software, we'll have opportunity for more robust analysis of like how many people here are a first-time buyer, or how many people here are a first-time buyer to the headliner series. They may have come to youth programming in the past, and now they're moving into our programming. And there's other kind of demographic and opportunities for surveying that we just don't have right now in an efficient way. So as we move ahead, we'll have better data and better ability to track that change.
I just want to chime in and say, if you ever to do a survey as a city resident, that would be a really cool thing, because we all have opinions and ideas, and I think it will be more impactful in that way. I just want to chime in.
Carolyn, is it okay if I dive in a little bit to the headliner series attendance?
Sure.
On the reports? I was just looking at the numbers, and it looks like there were 18 headliner shows in the last annual report, as opposed to 13 the report before that. And attendance looks to be down overall. It didn't look like there was any shows a year ago that were under 50% of capacity. And this past year, there were quite a few. How do you and your team kind of look at this data and decide what you're going to do about it? Or does it not concern you that much? You're like, you know what, we're putting on this show, it goes with the Bedford Gallery, and it is what it is. On to the next one.
It's a mix. So part of it is this is only, now we're in our 4th season, if we count our first half season as the first one. So it's a huge learning curve, right? Moving into presenting on this scale is a massive learning curve. And so we're seeing over time what things are working and what things where it was like, wow, we really thought that was going to be a hit. And interestingly, it's not. Or I was very surprised personally by the Doo-Wop project selling out in like a hot second. That was not one that I thought was going to be the most popular, right? I thought it would be successful, but not the rate at which it picked up. So we have a lot of learnings, as well as learnings around just expenses around producing, right? And what the current kind of climate is going to be in terms of what kind of additional equipment do we have to rent? What are the housing costs when we're bringing in different companies? For dance companies in particular, you know, we had to make a purchase of Marley floor in order to, you know, accommodate being a presenter in that way. So there's a lot over time that we're trying something new, and sometimes it's landing and sometimes it's not. So like 360 All-Stars, that was trying something new and that landed. So that gives us some information, right, of what people are looking for. But the kind of flip side of that is some of the programming we did around rediscovering Native America, the exhibition at the gallery, where that was very purposefully building components to that exhibition that were cross-genre, that moved us into the performing arts space by drawing on the themes of the exhibition. And we understood that we had never presented something like this before. So Good Medicine, an all-native comedy night, that had never been presented at the Lesher Center. It had never been presented in a way that wasn't some sort of outdoor opportunity. So it was also a learning curve for their producer of what some of the challenges of the messaging were about how it would be different and what to expect. And then like the panel discussion around contemporary Native artists working in different mediums. We understood that that's not something we've typically offered. We've offered things like that at the gallery specific to visual arts, but not so much broadening to other art forms. So we were not surprised that it wasn't as full as we would have really loved it to be. But as we're trying to reach all these new audience members and also just let people know that we're doing something that may be of interest to them, right? Because we've been around for 34 years now, and some community members may not even know about us because we've only recently had a full-time marketing department, or they looked at us in the past and they didn't really find something that resonated with them, and so they don't look in our direction right now. So part of, too, what we're doing with the Headliner series is trying to attract people's attention back to us. So sometimes when we do something like a Lyle Lovett, that's a big price tag. That's not going to see its return on ticket sales because we're a fairly small house, but it sees its return on attention to the center of, wow, something like that can happen here in Walnut Creek, and then gives us the opportunity to promote our other activities.
Thank you. How many people does the big theater hold?
785.
75, okay. My other question for you is to talk about subscribers for Center Rep. I know that the Lesher Center is not alone in seeing subscriptions down. I mean, we just lost Cal Shakes is completely out of business. And this is an issue for all, I'm sure, theater companies everywhere. How are you dealing with this kind of reduced subscription patronage?
Yeah, the theater industry continues to struggle, I think, the most coming out of the pandemic. It's not seeing the return of audiences that other performing arts are seeing, and they're struggling not just Center Rep, but theater, the industry at large is really struggling with a lot of major societal and cultural shifts to how theater should be produced and funded. So there's a lot kind of combating the theater world. We're really very fortunate that we have the support of the city, that we have the support of Diablo Regional Arts Association, that we are in a stable and strong position despite the fact that we're experiencing those lower subscription numbers. And I think we're coming out of kind of the drop of that, because there was definitely right after the pandemic a little surge of yay theater, like, you know, I'll subscribe, and then the following year there was like but I'm actually not going to theater anymore, right? I'm not going to subscribe. So we saw that big drop. And now this season, we're very pleased to be exceeding last year's subscription count and seeing that that is on its way back up, and that we're finding the balance with Matt's current season between attracting our current subscribers and their expectations of Center Rep and introducing a new artistic vision and a new way of working, including 2 world premieres in this season. So I think we're finding that those who are sticking with us are sticking, and we're bringing in new folks as we build up that subscriber base.
Thank you. Everything I've been to at the Lesher Center has been excellent. So I'm frustrated when I see empty seats because the programming is so good. And sometimes I think, is it possible maybe when there's empty seats and there's going to be empty seats to invite some high school theater students to come? I'm thinking just to fill seats and to be seeing live theater and get them excited about what we've got going on in Walnut Creek.
Yes, so we do especially when we see a night where it's not picking up, like perhaps November 1st, the Friday after Halloween, in the midst of a major election. We do have opportunity to utilize our pay what you can model, which includes free tickets, to flip that opportunity so that folks can sign up for those themselves online in order to help fill in the house, but also give us that data of who's coming, who's interested when we have those kinds of opportunities for either complimentary tickets or pay what you can.
And there may also be opportunity now that we have a student commissioner who's active in drama in North.
Yes.
I'll tell my theater teacher to advertise or to make it extra
Excellent.
credit. I'll
Love
talk to
it.
him.
And then finally, speaking of advertisement, your marketing person is doing an excellent job. I'm so thrilled to see the breadth of what's covered every week in the email and on socials. So tell them they're doing so well, and I'm appreciating how the word's getting out about everything.
Thank you for that. It really means a lot when you're working behind the scenes to have somebody notice everything that you're doing. So I will be sure to share with Randy Teradash, our marketing supervisor.
Can I chime in on that? So I recently saw The Dragon Lady with a friend and cried all the way through. I thought it was fantastic. So I went back naturally to brag about it to everyone because I'm part of a PTA in my school. And so I just want to chime in and tell you that there's a huge opportunity to somehow, I don't know how you would go about maybe sponsoring something. I don't know. I'm chairing one of the art competitions currently, so I'm in front of 400 kids. So I think there's an opportunity for, especially for the parents. They need date nights and things like that, and so I'm just trying to see like what programs or what outreach systems, what do we have in place that can reach out to those folks.
Yeah.
Because I think it's gold, and I think a lot of those folks are ready to go out and party, and also they feel community. They want to give back,
Yeah.
and they just don't know how. And I think not all of them are on the socials. Not all of them have they just don't know about it. And of course, I'm more than happy to advertise, but I think. As we're seeing these, numbers decreasing and we're, subscribes and all that, I do believe that either being a sponsor with a specific PTA, because PTAs is what makes the schools, and we have great PTAs in a lot of our Walnut Creek school system who are more than happy to advertise for you. E-news and obviously all those sorts. So I think reaching out to schools is an excellent.
Yes, that's a wonderful suggestion. And Randy's been with us just shy of a year and been building a marketing department from scratch. So he's getting to the point where he's ready for those ideas where it's like, okay, now how can we go further, right? Because a lot of his work this past year has been just foundational of, systems and making sure we're hitting all the things within our control. But as we look at, how can we broaden how we're getting the message out? Because we do have a robust list, but those are folks who already know about us, right? So we got to get to those who maybe forgot that they have their friendly neighborhood performing and visual arts center available to them.
I just want to compliment you on the annual report, all of you. It's a wonderful document. It's comprehensive. The strategies and priorities are clear. The metrics are there to comment on them. And it makes the Leisure Center look like the really exciting and vigorous facility that it is. And I hope it's part of your marketing plan, because you see the whole thing and you come away thinking, this is something I want to be more at.
Wonderful. Thank you for saying that. It was a big part of the strategic plan initially, was this concept of stop operating like 3 separate units. Excuse me, show the breadth of what you're doing across the center rep, and Bedford Gallery in partnership with DRAA. So the annual report is a nice time for us to look back and see our collective impact.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Okay. Are we on staff updates? Because I'll just stay here.
Announcements.
So to piggyback on Dragon Lady, it is your last week to see Dragon Lady with Sarah Porkalob, Broadway star, truly stunning talent. She plays, I think, 28 different characters. It's a solo musical adventure through the story of her grandmother's life, traveling from the Philippines to the United States. And Sarah is just really unbelievable. She's flipping between characters, second by second, and she's so precise and so fascinating to watch, and she has a beautiful voice. And the story, I think, is one that can touch anybody in terms of family ties and what it means to hold on to both the legacy that is good and maybe the legacy that's challenging about your family, and to honor all those pieces. So you have until Sunday to get there, see Dragon Lady. We are in full holiday mode. The tree is up, the decorations are going, the nutcrackers are happening. So between all of our producers and our own programming, we have holiday in abundance. So we hope to see many of you throughout the center in the next few weeks. But from our internal programs, we have Center Reps A Christmas Carol, as well as an opportunity to visit the North Pole and meet Santa and Mrs. Claus. Both of those activities have less slots available this year because of the way the holidays fell. They just kind of carved up a couple of dates from us. So if you want to join, make sure you grab your seats soon. And then in 2025, we're off and running with more headliner programs. We've got 2 in January, 2 amazing vocalists, as well as kicking off our Lesher Center in Your Neighborhood outreach events for 2025. And the world premiere of Froggy from Center Rep, which is a graphic novel thriller. Unlike anything you will have ever seen, and in development for more than a decade, and finally getting to see a full production. We're very excited for Matt Morrow, our artistic director, to be directing that as well.
Thank you, Carolyn. Emily?
It's me again, you guys. So just a couple updates for the Bedford. If you've never been to Craft Fest, it's this Saturday, and I highly recommend. We have, I think, 32 vendors this year that fill up the gallery from 10 to 5. It's a great opportunity to get your holiday shopping done in November versus December. And it's very lively and very festive, so please stop by for that. I will be there at 7:30, but you can come at 10. We also have yoga and sound healing in the gallery. So this is our second opportunity to present this type of workshop and event in the gallery. The first time it sold out, so we decided we would do it again to try to help people with their holiday stress, to de-stress a little bit and take a break. So that's happening Saturday, December 7th at 10, from 10 to 11:30. And our current show, Drawn to Abstraction, Prints from the 60s and 70s, closes December 15th. And so we will be closed through the holidays and reopening January 11th with Stitched Contemporary Embroidery. And that show features 19 international, national, and local artists who are using traditional embroidery techniques to tell these really beautiful narrative stories and use contemporary themes.
Emily, will you just talk for a moment about the different artists that you have in this Drawn to Abstraction show, please, because it's amazing.
Like the different types of abstraction?
The different artists that have their art there.
Oh, sure. Oh, the names. Absolutely. So if you are a fan of abstraction, if you're a fan of famous artists, if you're a fan of the 60s and 70s, this show is definitely for you. It has some huge heavy hitters from the 20th century. Helen Frankenthaler, Miro, Ellsworth Kelly, Frank Stella, Rauschenberg, Ruche. So there's a ton of people in that show. Huh? Yes, Rita Kent. She's wonderful. If you don't know who she is an artist nun, and she did some really, really wonderful work while she was alive. So it includes abstract expressionism, minimalism, pop art, and op art. So kind of a really wide breadth of abstraction from that those decades. And last week we had the director of curatorial affairs from the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts here. And so she came and did a curator talk, which was really wonderful.
I have a question about the embroidery show.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of our shows, or is that a traveling show?
No, I curated it. Yep.
Oh, excellent.
Mhm.
And how did you go about selecting the artists for that?
lots and lots of research. So I have the opportunity to go to Art Week in Miami almost every year. And so I find about, 80 to 90% of the artists for our shows there because it's a week's worth of research that gets done in a week. And there's about 35 art fairs that happen at that time. I don't get to quite all of them, but I do get to a lot of them. And that's where we find a lot of our artists.
So if they hit the Arts Week in Miami, they might be in your show?
Yes,
Okay.
if I'm lucky. Any other questions? Great.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Arts Commissioners. My name is Elizabeth Orcutt. I'm the Community Relations Manager for the Arts and Recreation Department, and I have the honor of giving you the updates from our colleague, Miley Ogasawara Garcia. She's our Program Manager over Center for Community Arts. She's unable to be here with us this evening. So before I dive into her updates, I do want to actually shout out her whole division. CCA, they hosted just this past weekend the Chili Bowl fundraiser, which was a huge success, hosted in partnership with the Clay Arts Guild as a fundraiser for ceramics art students. I think they were able to pay for over 15 scholarships. So, diving right in here, Handcrafted Holiday Sale will be Saturday, December 7th and Sunday, December 8th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. both days at Shadelands Art Center. This will have over 60 community arts, both teaching artists as well as students. It'll have their artwork available for sale. There will actually also be even a bunch of partnerships there, also raising funds for scholarships. All sorts of different nonprofits that'll be there. Clay Arts Guild, again, Community Arts Foundation, and they'll be offering different activities. Even your gift wrapping will be a fundraiser too for the Community Arts Dance Ensemble. They're raising funds for their costumes for their next show that will be hosted at the Lesher Center for the Arts. So again, Saturday, December 7th, Sunday, December 8th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Next, Youth Orchestra Winter Performance, Tuesday, December 17th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. I believe this will also be at Shadelands Art Center. So this is the Community Arts Youth Orchestra. They'll share classical and contemporary arrangements in their upcoming winter performance. The youth orchestra is led by instructor and conductor Rem Djemelev. I might have butchered that, sorry. Featuring performers ages 8 through 18. So that'll be a wonderful experience. That's just Tuesday, December 17th. Last, we have Adult Performing Arts Winter Concert on Thursday, December 19th at 6:45, also at Shadelands Art Center. Tickets will be $15 online or at the door. And let's see, that evening will entail magic of live performance as the Community Arts Dance Ensemble, Adult Orchestra, and Adult Choir. So you're getting a multifaceted experience that evening. And that's on December 19th, a great way to kick off your winter. And I also wanted to give you two quick updates from my point of view. We added the mural matching grant that was mentioned earlier to 7 different pages already, so we're up and running there. We'll get it in a couple more email newsletters, and I think we might work on a press release or 2 as well. So that's up and running. And then also Arts and Rec, our winter registration opens this upcoming Wednesday, starting at 12. Online, and you can also come see us at any of our front desks as well. That's when all of our registration will kick off for winter. So thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And then two things from me. Well, 3 things. One, thank you for hanging in there. It's almost 8 o'clock. We appreciate your volunteer time to help the community become more engaged with the arts. That's my first, just thank you. So just other updates. You may recall there was an election 2 weeks ago. Setting aside whatever national election news, there's always going to be that. But locally, 3 seats were up. So council members Kevin Wilk and Cindy Darling were reelected. You're aware that Luella Haskey was retiring from council. So Craig Deviney, who's new to elected office, was elected as well. So on December 3rd, I believe you will be invited to the installation of the new council and the retirement of Luella Haskey here in this room. So stay tuned for that. There'll be events here as part of the formal meeting, but then also a reception afterwards in the lobby. So you're welcome to join. You should receive an invitation shortly for that. And then for your January meeting, as you heard from Mariah, you will be spending most of the time on the Heather Farm Public Art consideration. As well, for those of you who were here 2 years ago, The City Council sets its priorities for the coming 2 years in February following their election. And so they look for each commission to provide input on what your priorities are and what you think the council should be considering for their own priorities. And so, so I will help facilitate that discussion in January on the 27th, so you can weigh in on what their priorities may be as they go into retreat in February to determine their own priorities. So you can look forward to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's time for commissioner announcements and reports on activities. Who would like to share what they've been up to in the arts world?
Hi again. I'm very excited to share that I got an agent. I will be represented by Marco Tanto, so I'm a creative artist who is now represented by Tanto Studios.
Any other commissioner reports before I start talking?
Sasha, what do you think about Northgate Productions, maybe?
Anything going on with Northgate Productions, Sasha?
November 1 act's closed. That's the show we do in production workshop, which is the highest level drama. We closed on Saturday. So now we're starting a new show.
Would be
We
for the
don't know
spring?
yet.
Okay, will you let us know in January?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Life mural updates. I am leading a production team of 14 women, and we're installing 18 murals at Central California Women's Prison in Fresno. We'll do that the whole first week of December. Really exciting.
That's super exciting. I've been busy with the Bedford Gallery. Right now with the show about abstraction, we were hoping we'd have a full slate of school tours, but my Thursday docents and I don't have any tours left, and we're pretty bummed about that because it is an amazing show, and I feel like every high school art student should be seeing this show. And I guess we're thinking that schools either are having a hard time getting parent drivers or parent chaperones or drivers or whatever it is, but we had a couple schools that booked at the beginning of the year and then canceled all their tours. So I'm frustrated by that because I want so many people to see this show. It's so great. I also want to say yes to the sound healing at the gallery. I went to the last one with the yogi Janine Ellis. So if you've never been to a sound healing, it's super cool. You're there with your mat on the ground in the Bedford Gallery, and Janine plays all her wonderful instruments. It's about an hour and 15 minutes. You don't have to have any yoga experience. So if that sounds interesting to you for like an hour and a half of Zen, sign up for it. I also went to my first Cocktails and Conversation this past week, and that was really interesting. I learned so much. So if these come up for every show, there's a Cocktails and Conversation, and I highly recommend them. But I have to say the highlight of my week is the public art walking tour on Saturday. We had heard word that we were going to have a group of like 15 people from a meetup group, we thought from next door. So we made sure we had 2 docents because we found that last November we also had a big crowd. Well, Emily, I'm giving you $350. That's 70 walkers. 70 paid walkers went on this public art walking tour. So I kind of wanted you just to like go, oh my goodness. It was a beautiful fall day in Walnut Creek. I had about 40 of those walkers. Thank goodness I had a microphone. Carol Fowler had the other 35. And Sasha was in my group with her mother. I think you guys enjoyed it, didn't you?
It was really good.
Yeah, we just had a great time. I think most of the people stuck with me all the way through. I love tour number 4. I love November. So we'll be back again in April for tour number 1, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, then 1, 2, 3, 4, then we take off the winter. So I'm excited to give you $350. That's I want to tell you who is there. Sasha and her mother, this meetup group from I don't know where, Loma Arts Alliance, AAUW, which is American Association of University Women, one of our Bedford docents who brought 8 other people with them, and I've recruited 2 new docents. That's my report. Pardon?
You got it.
I'm thrilled. I am thrilled now to adjourn this meeting and do a nice big good night, everybody. Thank you.